They're children who never really got to be children. Not because they didn't want to, not because childhood wasn't available to them, but because something in their world asked more of them than a child should ever have to give. And so they grew, quietly, quickly, without anyone really noticing, including themselves. Maybe this was you. Maybe you don't have many memories of being carefree. Maybe your clearest childhood memories aren't about playing or laughing, but about watching, listening, trying to understand a world that felt too heavy for your small shoulders. Maybe you learned very early that the world didn't slow down just because you were young. If any part of that feels familiar, this is for you. There's a certain kind of child who seems older than they are. Teachers notice it. Relatives comment on it. She's so mature for her age. He's so responsible. People say it like it's a compliment. And maybe it is, but what nobody asks is why. Why is this child so calm in a room full of chaos? Why does this child already know how to manage their own emotions, make their own meals, comfort their own sadness? Why does this child never ask for too much? The answer is usually quiet and simple. They learned they had to be. Some children grow up inside homes where the adults are struggling. Not bad people, not broken people, just overwhelmed people. Parents carrying their own weight, grief, financial pressure, illness, exhaustion, the silent heaviness of their own unhealed lives. And children, because they love deeply and observe everything, begin to feel that weight too. They sense when a parent is close to tears. They learn which topics to avoid. They learn when to disappear into their room and when to appear with a soft smile, just to make things feel lighter. Maybe you were that child. Maybe you became the one who held things together, not because anyone asked you to, but because love, for you, looked like making yourself smaller so others could feel safer. This is what psychologists sometimes call parentification, when a child takes on emotional or practical responsibilities that belong to the adults around them. But you don't need that word to understand the feeling. You just know what it's like to be 7 years old and already fluent in adult worry. Some children are left alone often, physically alone or emotionally alone, which is sometimes quieter but heavier. They learn to fill their own silences, to solve their own problems, to cry and then stop crying and figure out the next step. Not because they were taught resilience, but because there was simply no one to call. Some children are told, directly or indirectly, to be strong. Don't cry. You're fine. Look after your brother. And so they tuck the softer parts of themselves somewhere safe, somewhere no one will find them, somewhere even they forget to look. They learn not to need anyone, and for a while that feels like power. It is a kind of power, let's be honest about that. The child who grew up too soon becomes someone who can handle pressure without breaking, someone who stays calm when others panic, someone who reads a room the moment they walk in, someone who is kind and thoughtful and almost always thinking about everyone else. These aren't small things, they are real strengths, earned strengths, but they come with a quieter cost. Because that same child, now grown, often struggles to relax, not because they don't want to, but because relaxing never felt safe. Something was always about to happen. Something always needed attention, and so the body learned to stay ready. The mind learned to stay watchful. They find it hard to trust, not because they're cold, but because they learned early that depending on people could lead to disappointment. And disappointment, when you're small and alone, is unbearable. So they stopped depending. They became the one others depend on instead. They feel responsible for everything, the mood in the room, the feelings of the people they love, the outcomes of situations they can barely control. They carry a weight that isn't always theirs to carry, and most days they don't even notice it's there. Maybe this is still you. And then these children grow up, fully, into adults who are steady and perceptive and quietly strong. They walk into a room and people feel safe around them without knowing why. They're the ones who call to check in, the ones who notice when something is wrong before anyone says a word, the ones who rarely ask for help but are always the first to give it. They build lives that are stable because stability was what they always longed for. They love carefully because they know how much it costs to love someone who isn't able to hold you back. They are not broken. They were shaped by circumstances that asked too much, too early, and they rose to meet those circumstances because that is what children do when love and survival ask it of them. But here's what I want to leave with you. You don't have to keep carrying everything alone. That was a tool you built in a time when you had no other choice. It kept you safe, it helped you survive, and it deserves to be honored for that. But you are not in that place anymore. You are allowed to need people. You are allowed to rest without guilt. You are allowed to let someone else hold something for a while. You are allowed to have soft moments, not because you've stopped being strong, but because strength was never supposed to mean silence and solitude forever. The child in you who learned to manage everything, who learned to ask for nothing, who learned to be the calm in every storm, that child did something remarkable. They carried you here. They kept you whole when everything around you was uncertain. But here's what I want to leave with you. They deserve something now, something they didn't get back then. They deserve to rest. You grew up early because something asked it of you. You adapted beautifully and quietly in ways most people will never fully understand, and that is not a wound you need to hide. It is a depth that makes you who you are. You are not behind. You are not damaged. You are someone who learned the weight of the world young and chose again and again to carry it with grace. That is not a small thing. That is everything.